Ukrainian armed forces managed to expand their foothold on the left bank of the Dnipro, while the Russians can show some success, some further success in Avdiivka, though it is paid for with heavy losses. We also have developments along the other front lines, as well as Russian attempts to increase their recruitment potential without doing a next wave of a mobilization. And finally, a Russian longtime ally is moving away from its alliance with the Kremlin. This and more in this situation report. Hello and welcome. We'll start in the north of the front line here, close to Kupiansk. There is a geolocalization for Russian presence along the front line, and it's west of Liman Pershi in the wooded area, so that we see that the Russians likely have advanced slightly further south, but again, we are talking about 100 to 200 meters. Apart from that, they also have had some minor success in the south, here close to Dibrova. They managed to push the Ukrainians somewhat away in this area, but they, at least as we see for now with the evidence that's available, they were not able to occupy those positions, meaning that the contested area is expanded in this area as the Ukrainians have been pushed back, but the Russians have not really gained the territory itself yet. We have a lot of Russian attacks along the whole front line here from north to south, though those were the only two cases where we see some visual evidence of likely expanded Russian control, or at least of the Russians having some military success. We also have a lot of Ukrainian counterattacks along the whole front line. Up to 20 happened there, but I have not seen any evidence of those counterattacks having any success. Further south of the Seversky Donetsk, the fighting is continuing. The Ukrainian attacks seem to have shown no success whatsoever, whereas the Russians attacked in several places and claim that they are trying to take over the initiative. We, for instance, have Russian BMP-3s in this area here, south of the Berhivka reservoir. They withdrew though, and at least one of them was destroyed in the video evidence that's available. So we see that the Russians try to advance further here, and at least in the last weeks they were able to push the Ukrainians further away from the Berhivka reservoir, thus extending the contested area. South here we have visual evidence of the Russians occupying this tree line, which was so far being considered as contested. This here is right in the tree line where they have been shelled by Ukrainian artillery, by Ukrainian mortars. So we do know that this is now again occupied. Whether it has been occupied the whole time, I cannot really say. So I cannot confirm this is an actual fresh gain by the Russians. It's probably one, but we at least now have the confirmation that this tree line is likely fully under Russian control as of now. As said, no confirmation of Ukrainian successes along this area. Even the claims from the Ukrainian side are somewhat dubious and somewhat hesitant. So it seems like their additional attacks along the railroad line here have not shown any success. The Russians, on the other hand, further south at Avdiivka, are managing to creep closer towards the coke plant here. They have expanded their control along the railroad line here, and they are in full control of the waste heap right here at the coke plant. They managed to push the Ukrainians somewhat away from these positions here towards the coke plant, which will likely be a strong point for the Ukrainian defense. And at the same time, we do have Ukrainian military bloggers now confirming, as you can see here on the pictures, they are confirming that the waste heap is now under Russian control. We already talked about this in past videos, but now we have the confirmation by the Ukrainian side as well. The Russians, other than that, attacked in the south as well, Sivierne Pervomayske. There is some claim by Russian military bloggers that they advanced along those lakes here. I cannot see any visual evidence, though, of this. So as of now, it's not confirmed, but we do have some Russian successes south at Novomikhailivka. They managed to more or less gain this area here, managed to push the Ukrainians away and occupy new positions south of Novomikhailivka. At the oblast border, we have continuous Russian attacks. Staromayorske, Priutne, and towards the east of it, I cannot confirm any change in territory though, so it seems the front line has been stable. At Orikhiv, we have additional Ukrainian attacks at the Robotine and towards Verbove. We see that the Ukrainians likely had a minor success in advancing west of Robotine into the tree line here, where they are currently using Leopard 2 main battle tanks. Some of them have been lost in this area. They are pushing in this direction, but the gains, if they were able to consistently hold the area, if they were able to occupy the area, are fairly limited. Russian mill bloggers are writing that the Ukrainians are trying to widen the front line. They report attacks starting more or less at Nesteryanka down to Novoprokopivka, indicating that the Ukrainians are still trying to advance towards Tokmak, where they urgently need to widen their break into the Russian front line to not be cut off. The Russian minefields, though, are mentioned as a serious hindrance to the Ukrainians. Obviously, the minefields here are more or less still intact, whereas here they have been overcome, at least the original minefields. We have Riba, no, not Riba, we have Wargonzo confirming an additional success in this regard. Here, Wargonzo is reporting that they are near the first of the listed settlements. The Russian armed forces withdrew from some of their occupied positions, and the first mentioned settlement is Nesteryanka. So Wargonzo, the pro-Russian military blogger, is reporting that the Ukrainians took over some positions here at Nesteryanka, but overall, again, while we can confirm some Ukrainian successes, it is limited in scale. Russian military bloggers are also writing that the tempo of Ukrainian advances is limited because of the weather. The Rasputitsa, the rainy season, the mud season has fully started and is now hindering the Ukrainians in advancing on the wet and soft soil. The bridgehead along the, or we have to say the bridgeheads along the Dnipro are still in existence. The Russians are confirming, even Riba, who before claimed that Krinky is fully occupied again, even Riba is confirming that the Ukrainians are still occupying parts of Krinky. They are saying that any attempt to advance towards them is hindered by heavy artillery and mortar fire from the Ukrainian side. Thus, advances towards them are close to impossible, and they are able to settle down. They are also writing that the Ukrainians consistently send reinforcements, so there is no indication whatsoever that this time it is a raid. This is meant for real. They want to expand their control here, even though mostly with infantry methods. We have a geolocalization of fresh Ukrainian positions along the Dnipro on the left bank, and we see them here and here. And this is in the direction of Pitstetne. It should be more or less in this area here where we see the Ukrainians have also advanced. So we see additional points of their attacks. They are still here and pushing towards Oleshki. They are still here pushing towards Piszczanivka and Poima. And they are attacking along this line here as well. All of this area is now liberated by the Ukrainians, and from there they are doing additional attacks towards the east. They are sending in reinforcements the whole time, evacuating woundeds, and the Russian military bloggers confirm that the Ukrainians are reinforcing their positions on the west bank of the Dnipro. There are some claims that now the Ukrainians have mortars on their side, but still no confirmation of heavier weapons, real artillery pieces, bigger artillery pieces, and even IFVs, APCs, or MBTs. So it's still infantry just with accompanying mortars on this side of the Dnipro. Generally, we have some information. The Ukrainians are saying that the Russian strengths between Kupiansk and Liman, as it's usually said, so more or less Kremina to Kupiansk, is still roughly 100,000 Russian soldiers. They have made up for the losses they suffered there by sending additional reinforcements by deploying reserves, and the Ukrainian military is now claiming that at Avdiivka the Russians have lost 5,000 men in wounded and fallen. as well as 400 items of big military items, 400 tanks, APCs, IFVs, etc. The visual evidence isn't as damning for the Russians, though over 100 items, 100 tanks, IFVs, etc. are identified to be fresh losses around Avdiivka. So we can confirm that the Russians likely have lost the equivalent of several of the pre-war battalion tactical groups in their attacks around Avdiivka, even though they have had additional success with this. The question whether it's worth it or not will obviously have to be answered separately. Zelensky is also, the Ukrainian president is also saying the Ukrainian side are preparing for an additional winter campaign by the Russians. Basically, they are saying the Russians will attack the Ukrainian infrastructure again this winter. We talked in the past that the Russians have increased their cruise missile production. The GOR confirmed that, and right now they are barely using them. This is all clear indications that the Russians, as soon as the winter goes bad, they will try to overwhelm the Ukrainian infrastructure and thus put all of Ukraine into darkness, not only endangering the civilians or putting pressure on the civilians, but also obviously cutting the power for the defense industry in Ukraine that is still operating. Zelensky addressed that and says he recommended, that's at least what I find, that he recommended that Ukraine should think about doing the same to the Russians, using their drones, using their developed weapons to strike Russian infrastructure, Russian power grid, etc., to pay back with the to pay back for the Russian attacks on the Ukrainian infrastructure. Partisan information we have about Berdyansk. Here, the GUR is reporting that a car bomb was placed in a car used by FSB officers. It exploded and killed several of them. So supposedly the attack on the FSB there was successful. When it comes to troop generation, we have Medvedev giving us additional information. He's now claiming that 385 soldiers were recruited since January this year. 305 of those are contract soldiers and 80,000 are volunteers. The overall numbers obviously cannot be confirmed independently from afar, but they don't seem to be completely off. We should expect some rounding upwards, but that in reality they only recruited 120,000 while they claim 385 seems highly unlikely. Obviously, then it's pure guesswork how close to the reality the numbers are. This is kind of difficult to say, but let's just report the numbers he has, and you can put your own conclusion to that. Medvedev is also claiming that they are daily recruiting more than 1,600 men for the forces along the front line, and that they want to establish additional units in 2024. They want to create 1 army corps, 7 motorized rifle divisions, 19 brigades and 49 regiments, as well as 1 flotilla. So the Russians claim that they will extend their military significantly, and they are convinced, or at least they give the claim that they can do that without an additional wave of mobilization. One of the reasons for that will be the pressure on foreigners. A law has come into effect right now in Russia that will allow to take away citizenship from naturalized citizens if they have been sentenced for discrediting the Russian military or any other cases where any other sentences towards public and private security. The interesting part here is there's no connection to when that crime was committed, when the sentencing happened, or how long they have been citizens. So theoretically, everything is possible if you're a naturalized citizen and one of those crimes was either in the past or is right now being sentenced for it. You might lose your citizenship. The interpretation here is obviously that this will be used to put pressure on migrants by taking away the citizenships, by threatening to take away their citizenship to force them to sign up for the armed forces of Russia. At the same time, though, Russia made it easier to gain citizenship inside of Russia, which then would allow for additional recruitment as well, and obviously allow those measures to affect more people as well. The Russians also did an exercise where they had tried their nuclear triad. For that, they fired an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, an SLBM, a submarine launched ballistic missile, and they launched nuclear-capable cruise missiles from Tupolev 95 bombers, demonstrating that the full nuclear triad is working. Their weapons are working as a demonstration, obviously, towards the world, that the world is not supposed to think that Russia's nuclear weapons might not work in any ways. International support, we have some information as well. The European Union only has delivered so far 30% of the 1 million grenades it promised Ukraine. They were supposed to be delivered until March 2024, so theoretically there's still some time, but according to reports, the European Union deliveries are behind schedule, and quite significantly though. From the UK, another $100 million worth of equipment are being promised to the Ukrainian armed forces, as well as from the US, where another 150 million were promised for them as well. And finally, we have some information not directly from Russia, but from fairly close, from Armenia. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, the Armenian president Pashinyan says there is no advantage for Armenia to have a military base inside of Russia, basically asking Russia to leave its or at least preparing the environment for demanding the Russians to leave their military base inside of Armenia. Before, he already said the peacekeepers in Nagorno-Karabakh, when they return, they shouldn't go to Armenia, they should go directly to Russia. There's no point of having them inside of Armenia. He also said that Armenia is in the process of diversifying its security partnerships. And in that context, I guess it's to be said that Armenia just made an arms deal with France to get weapons from there. But whether anyone can make up for the military protection that Russia offered before 2022, when they still were capable of providing military aid towards Armenia, is obviously a different question. The only likely candidate that is close by is Iran, and whether Iran wants to commit, in worst case, fighting Azerbaijan and Turkey for Armenia seems fairly unlikely. So we'll have to observe how that's going to develop in the future. That was already it from me for now for this situation report. If you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment what do you think about the Russian military alliance in Central Asia, how it's going to develop. We have, for instance, Kazakhstan still claiming that they uphold the embargoes, basically help the West fight Russia in this regard, while at the same time aiding Russia with gray imports, with allowing for illegal imports. Leave your comment about that in the comment section. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.